Patagonia has made a name for itself as a sustainable clothing company with a bold mission, but it's also a multi-billion-dollar company in one of the most resource-intensive industries. Is Patagonia really the ethical clothing company that it makes itself out to be? It's built an entire brand image on the idea that a clothing company can be sustainable. But have you ever looked beyond the label and asked yourself if they're really living up to their mission? Let's start with what they seem to be doing well. In the 1990s, they were pioneers in introducing organic cotton into their clothing. This was undeniably a big step forward for the brand's sustainability. Conventional cotton cultivation relies on chemicals that seep into the ground and the water. Some of these chemicals, called organophosphates, were first designed not for agriculture, but for war. These chemicals can cause serious damage to both humans and animals, not to mention the soil itself. The switch wasn't easy for Patagonia. Most other clothing companies were still relying on farmers using the old method of pesticides. Patagonia had to raise their prices, find new spinners, and suffer through a loss in profit for the next couple of years. Now, 100% of the cotton they use, if it's not recycled, is organic. But what about the other materials found in Patagonia's clothing? Aside from cotton, Patagonia uses polyester, nylon, and a number of other synthetic materials. Some of these synthetic materials are extremely toxic. Take DWR, for example. DWR stands for Durable Water Repellent. There's nothing natural about the way water beads up and rolls across your waterproof jacket when you're out in the rain. The reason why your jacket is able to keep you dry is because of chemicals like DWR, and these chemicals have been found to be notoriously damaging to the environment. According to a 2015 study by the environmental group Greenpeace, traces of these materials have been found in places as remote as mountain lakes and streams. What's worse is that these chemicals can take thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years to break down. Patagonia has announced that they're well on their way to phasing out these chemicals from their clothing, but after decades of use, who knows how much of these toxic chemicals are already in our environment and our bodies. Another way that Patagonia promotes sustainability is by offering to repair your clothes so that you don't have to buy something new. They say that this is one way to reduce consumerism. To drive this anti-consumerist point home, they even famously took out a full-page ad in the New York Times in 2011, urging buyers not to buy their products if they don't have to. Besides encouraging customers to send in their damaged clothes for a free repair, they also give sewing lessons at college campuses, give store credit in return for trade-ins, and work with entrepreneurs to take unsaleable clothing and make them into useful things like bags, purses, and scarves. This is pretty much the polar opposite of today's fast fashion, where giant clothing companies like Zara and H&M churn out new lines of clothing every week, and the average American throws away about 100 pounds of textiles every year. Compared to companies that are focused solely on the bottom line, Patagonia really does stand out as a champion of sustainability. But there's another argument that some critics have raised. Patagonia claims that its mission is to help the Earth. But no matter how many ways they try to make their products environmentally friendly, the truth is they would still have far less of a negative impact if they simply didn't exist. For example, there's the issue of labor. Many of the factories Patagonia relies on are fair trade certified, meaning that Patagonia pays a premium price for the products it receives. That extra money then goes directly to the people making the clothes, which is great for the workers in those factories. But since Patagonia doesn't actually own their factories, they have very little control over what goes on at every step of the supply chain. So, outside of those fair trade certified factories, abuses can still happen. Like in 2011, when Patagonia discovered multiple instances of human trafficking, forced labor, and exploitation in their supply chain. And that wasn't even the first time. With much of Patagonia's supply chain located overseas, it's difficult to prevent labor violations. As serious as Patagonia is about doing right by its workers, the reality of how suppliers and manufacturers interact within the apparel industry makes abuses like these almost inevitable. So, is Patagonia really helping the world through its attempt to be a sustainable clothing company? Is that even possible? Most people don't realize that two of the world's biggest outdoor apparel brands, Patagonia and the North Face, were founded by two good friends who shared everything from climbing adventures to their desire to protect the beautiful landscapes where they spent so much time together. While one of these men, Yvon Chouinard, chose to build Patagonia into an example of how the apparel industry can be better, the North Face's founder, Doug Tompkins, took a very different path. In 1989, he decided that his company was doing more harm than good, and that the solution was to simply stop selling people things they don't need. So, he quit the apparel industry and found other ways to protect nature, buying up millions of acres of wilderness and turning that land into protected areas. Patagonia will continue to champion environmental causes and draw attention to problems within the apparel industry, but they'll also continue to drive an industry that by its very nature is harming the earth. Whether that trade-off is worth it or not is ultimately up to each consumer to decide.